Unmuted, Elaine. Hello, welcome to the live stream. It is DC and Kat, and we have been reading through the Young Living v. doTERRA lawsuit about the breach of contract that Young Living claimed that some brand partners and employees of Young Living did. And we already know the outcome. Young Living lost, and that doesn't really impact my personal perspective about multi-level marketing companies. But the reason we're reading this is to uncover some of the tea that we are seeing in these transcripts, how Gary Young behaved, his perspective about some of his employees being possessed by Satan, some of the perspective the show must go on. For example, the current president of doTERRA, Emily Wright, was Gary Young and Mary Young's assistant/events coordinator. Emily came to Mary Young and said, "Hey, there's a potential volcanic eruption in Ecuador. We need to cancel convention." And Mary Young said, "Absolutely not. Those were not her exact words. I am just trying to convey what happened." And we're reading about that in all the transcripts. So it's been interesting so far. Gary Young moonlighting as a doctor, but he didn't say that he did that. He just said he was part of the surgical team. It goes on and on and on. And so the reason that we're doing this in its entirety, I've seen Young Living reps disparage people who have left Young Living by clipping them out of context. And being in a high control group, i.e. Young Living, and not having access to the entire pieces of information was very difficult. So I know this can be dry sometimes, but I think it's important. And I'd love for Kat to speak on this too after she introduces herself, because she's incredible. She's the brains behind this operation. She's our registered dietitian superhero, and love her in a non-culty way. But yeah, I think that sharing information in its entirety is helpful to combat the information control, combat the that we're trying to slime them in any kind of way. We're trying to show you, hey, decide for yourself. This is 4,000 pages of transcripts, and there's lots of information in there. I'm excited that Kat's even doing this with me. I found her through Kira Manchester, who is Mombi on her website, Mombi-anti-MLM. Kira is the reason that we have these transcripts in the first place. She's been an activist for a long time, trying to tell people about the bad behavior and the bad actors in multi-level marketing. And Kat's been helping her. They were a big part in taking down Black Oxygen Organics. And I'm happy to learn from them and be around them and like learn the activist side of it. And yeah, I want to hand the microphone over to Kat after this long-winded intro. And yeah, she's incredible. So I'm excited for her to introduce herself to everybody.
You always just like gas me up. Oh man.
It's true. It's true.
I'm excited that you're doing this with me. So I'm registered dietitian. Oh, is there feedback?
There's a smidgen. Let me just double check. It's me. Let me. Is that better?
Yeah,
Is that
that's it.
all right?
So I'm a registered dietitian and online nutrition coach. I focus in on sports nutrition, digestive health, prenatal nutrition, and overall building and strengthening a healthy relationship with food. I do a lot of nutrition, nutrition educator as like breaking down information into consumers or for consumers. And so on my channel, I like to break down multi-level marketing, nutrition related ones, products, supplement products and programs, and just, I was gonna say rip them to shreds, but that's I don't use that language typically. I don't know why. I like to dispel some of the myths that the distributors kind of promote. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And don't let Kat downplay herself too much. She is incredible. She has saved us many a time when we're like, what the hell's going on? And she comes in with her ability to read actual scientific studies and help. And again, people can use knowledge to like misinterpret things on purpose. And I love having ethical, intelligent people that I know, like Kat, who can say, hey, this is what this means, or this is not what the study said, or there's more to this information, or there needs to be more to this information because you cannot make those assumptions or conclusion based on this. And here's why. She helps people to understand like the why behind the stuff, not just accept me for like what I'm saying because I have some letters after my name. And I really like that about her. I think empowering people with knowledge is really important. And I don't know. I always want to like boost Kat, and I don't do a great job every time, but I don't know. I really value her, and yeah, it's been great so far. And
all right, let's change topics.
Yeah. Make Kat too nervous. Let me go ahead and pull up the trial pad. And Kat, can you give us a little bit of a spark notes about what did we lead? What did we read last time with Justin Harrison?
So we're on the cross-examination of Justin Harrison, which means that we already went through the direct examination. So primarily we are reading from the defendant attorney side. So doTERRA. Man, there was so much information. One of the big things was how he wanted to leave Young Living, go to doTERRA because he was just over it from Gary Young. He was tired of Gary's shenanigans. He was tired of Gary, just his behavior in the company, and a lot of other people who were in corporate in the company, they were just getting tired, fed up with Gary and his antics.
Yeah, Kat says antics. I say temper tantrums. And you know, when as a CEO, and I've never been a CEO of a company, when you start having your entire team that is supposed to be in place to help run the company, and now they've all tried to have to reallocate their focus to calming you down and making sure you're getting the attention you want. That seems to be potential for a problematic and unhealthy work environment, and we kind of see that in some of these transcript readings. Yes, we are all stan Kat's hair. Absolutely. It's a whole
overtone is great. Overtone.
Yeah. Avery wants to know, what are you drinking? And you may have already answered that.
Matcha latte.
Ooh, nice. That sounds delicious. Okay, let me go ahead and present my screen.
And water.
Yes, I have water today for the first time in forever because I feel like I got influenced by Kat in a good way. So I have my water. Yeah. Do I drink water normally? No, I do not, but I'm going to try to be better. I'm going to try to be a little bit, a smidgen better. Okay, this is...
Overtone, though, is really, really nice. Pretty affordable.
Cool. Let's see.
For hair color.
Share.
Oh, nice, Avery. I'm not a hair stylist person, so if it's terrible for your hair, then don't take my word for it. That's just what I've been using. I did get it okayed by my hairstylist, though.
Okay, we've got this, and then we are going to
as upkeep, because it does need to get bleached. I did need it bleached before I'd used it.
Open as pop-up, and then we're gonna go full screen. No, we're not. There we go. That's kind of better. All right.
Yeah, copper. That sounds amazing.
Okay, and trial pad.
I could not pull out off the copper, but on others that looks great. I tried a red one time. It didn't. It clashed with my skin tone.
Well, I think purple's pretty incredible. So I really do like the purple. Hi, Sky. Hello, Marmiel. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm gonna go ahead and I guess still who's I don't even remember who's talking.
It's Smith. Gaylord.
Gaylord? Okay. Live chat. Are we still using polite demon lawyer for Gaylord, or are we using snarky baby snark? Y'all can decide. Let us know in the live chat. Lynn, hi. Lynn is in Norway, so her time is a little bit different than everybody. So she's normally part of the late night live crew.
Nice. What time is it in Norway right now, Lynn?
I want demon lawyer, but I'm biased. Okay.
You can do that.
You have one vote for demon lawyer. Polite demon. Okay. It's 9 p.m. Oh.
Oh, wow.
Cool. All right. Well,
I think we're ready. I'm going to go with polite demon lawyer.
So were we at the top of this page, I think? And I think we might be able to get through this the rest of this transcript today, potentially.
Yeah.
So let's start at the top, I guess. Or I'll start with this question and I'll carry over to the top and then we can start.
Okay.
If that's okay with you.
That works.
All right.
Okay, this is Mr. Gaylord. Do you recall having any conversations with Gordon Herbert from the February 9th phone call that we just talked about until you showed up on February 28th to do the meeting?
I'm sure we did have phone calls, yes.
Was that a meeting that you prepared or planned and invited everybody to?
No.
Who prepared and planned and invited those people?
This was Gina Truman's event.
Okay, and you regularly talked. I think we already established with Mr. Herbert, right?
Yes.
So was it your practice when you would come down to St. George, you would inform Mr. Herbert that, hey, I'm coming to town?
Yes, often. We like to go on hikes near his home.
So it's reasonable to assume that the calls you had with Mr. Herbert was to say you were coming down.
Yes.
And fair to say that by this time, Mr. Herbert already said, look, if you're doing something, I'm in.
Yes, correct.
And if you come down did you fly down or did you drive down?
I drove down.
Did you spend the night?
No.
Okay, you flew down?
Drove down.
You drove down. And you came back the same night?
Yes.
Do you recall how long the meeting lasted? Couple hours, I think you said?
Yeah, I think at most 2 hours.
I'm sorry, I lost my place. This is so
It was 14. Hey, Kira.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Oh, if I missed anybody, Mermeow, hello. Christina, excited to have everybody here. Grocery shopping. That's totally cool. Gotta do the necessities. It'll be available on the replay. Okay.
We're back. And Mr. Toth asked you a number of questions about the Young Living contingent that was there. Do you remember him asking that?
I do.
And let me just skip my little, there we go. And I think your testimony is you remembered two people that were at the meeting from Young Living, right?
Correct.
That was Gina Truman
Correct.
and Gordon Herbert.
Yes.
And Julie wasn't there?
Julie was not there.
Okay, and your understanding when you got there is, one, Gina, she was already committed to doTERRA because she was having this meeting?
Correct.
And that Rob James was already committed to this doTERRA because of him participating in this meeting.
Correct.
And they were the ones who invited the participants?
Correct.
So when you're talking to a YL crowd, that YL crowd consisted of just two YL distributors, right?
That I was aware of, yes.
Those two YL distributors had already committed to
doTERRA, yes.
Now, let me direct your attention. You were asking a question about this list up here. If I may, you were asked about this list. Do you remember that? You were asked some questions about everyone on that list by Mr. Toth in response to an inquiry over your verified defendants' answers to plaintiff's first set of interrogatories. Do you remember that?
I do.
He had you read into the record the answer on page 17. Do you remember that?
Yes.
As to who you did not contact in terms of former employees or distributors, right?
Right.
And then he followed that up by asking about you asked each of those individuals whether they wanted to join doTERRA, right? Do you recall that?
I do, yes.
Okay, your testimony is you never contacted them in which you asked them to join doTERRA, did you?
No, I did not.
So your testimony in page 17 was truthful?
Yes.
So when you asked by Mr. Toth that you were making a sales pitch, to whom it wasn't to two YL distributors, it was to the other attendees.
Correct.
And that's because those others had already committed. Those two YL distributors had committed.
Yes.
And the others were people you did not know?
I did not know anyone else in the room.
Let's talk about Greg Anderson again. Talk about Greg Anderson. Do you know when he submitted his form?
I do not.
Do you know whether you had any conversations with Mr. Anderson prior to his enrolling with doTERRA?
I don't believe so, no.
You were asked questions about conversations with Greg Anderson. Are you sure that you had conversations with Greg Anderson?
I do recall a conversation with his wife, Carmen.
So, when you were asked questions about conversations on April 6th and April 8th, is it possible? Well, isn't it true that you were having conversations with Carmen Anderson and not Greg Anderson?
That is my recollection, yes.
Let's talk about Miss Jellings for a moment. I think you were asked some questions about Miss Jellings. You were asked a question, and I want to be sure I got this right. I think the question that was asked to you is your testimony that during any of these phone calls, with Miss Jellings, you never said anything to Miss Jellings to join doTERRA? And you answered no. Is that the correct answer?
And then Mr. Toth says object to form, compound, and the court or judge says sustained. And back to Mr. Gaylord.
Cool. And if you're new to these readings, if you don't know what compound means, it means that they asked a question and then they didn't wait for an answer and then they asked another question, so that if whatever would have been answered by the witness, it wouldn't have been clear to the jury what they were answering the answer to, if that makes sense. So when you're asking questions as a lawyer, you have to ask something that can be answered and then you ask the next question. So if that's not clear, I got the Snark Notes video out for y'all for transcript 1, and we're on transcript 4, so I have a lot left to do to catch everybody up, but I'll make sure to cover that in the Spark Notes video. Okay.
Mr. Gaylord's back. Well, let me ask you this. During any of your phone calls with Miss Jellings, did you ever ask her to join doTERRA?
No.
Were you, sorry. Were,
13.
13? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
You were asked some questions? And if we can, let's pull up 21,161.
Okay.
I may have misspoke. I said that you had phone calls with Carmen Anderson on 4/6, April 6th, and April 9th. I think I should have said you didn't have any conversations with her on April 6th. Is that true?
And then Mr. Toth says again, objective form, compound, because there is multiple things being brought up and asked in that statement. Mr. Gaylord, get it together. The court says sustained. Back to
Isn't
Mr.
it
Gaylord.
true? Yes, isn't it true that you had no calls with Miss Carmen Anderson on April 6th?
True.
And you did call and have a conversation with Carmen Anderson on April 9th.
Yes.
Let me turn back to Judy Jellings. I'm going to show you a document. Don't bring it up. 1164. If you look at 1164, it's right here.
Okay. Mr. Toth says, Your Honor, can we have a sidebar? The court says yes, and a sidebar discussion was had. Back to the court, or the judge says, apparently the jury wants a recess. Since we're all ignoring you for a minute, it's probably a good time to give you a break. Why don't we give the jury a brief recess? Do not discuss the case with another. We'll talk amongst ourselves for 1 minute and give you a recess. And the jury left the courtroom, and then they're back. And okay, so he says, all right, I've got the Young Living's objection. So now I'm flipping through the tabs and I'm not seeing the production. Can someone help me? Mr. Toth says, I don't know that we have it. Your Honor, we'll identify it. There are 2 different separate requests where we ask for 2 different requests for production. And Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith says, Your Honor, we wrote several letters back and forth on the subject. I think very difficult for the court to rule on this without looking at the letters back and forth and the request. The letters identified the date we got them, the lack of a request. We identified what requests may have been closed but failed to meet that requirement. We never came to terms. I can't say, doesn't say no, but the truth of the matter, again, is that the documents weren't found the first time, even though there were diligent searches. Is this part of the sidebar? No, this is back.
No, I don't think so. It is just maybe it is. So should we skip it? Do you think we should skip it? Okay. If you're watching this or listening to this, they're trying to sort out some stuff, and when they call when they're talking about production, that is the production of the documents for the jury. So like that's what the e-discovery and legal document company would be doing, and so they're trying to figure out what's going on. So we're gonna skip a few pages.
Really
yeah, it's not really. It's just basically arguing back and forth. Let's see. Every deposition. Okay, so they're arguing about something that happened. Oh, and they're saying that people weren't produced, and so they're going back and forth. And they're saying, oh, they're being awful. No, you're being awful. And then they're arguing about dates. And they're saying, when was this produced? Okay, I would agree. Take 2 things. So we're skipping some pages. And they're still arguing about it. And the judge is saying that they're going to cross the bridge when they come to it.
They're all being awful. Yes, Avery.
Yeah. They're all being awful. And again, I scanned through these pages. If you're watching this, you feel free to pause it and read through it if you want to. We have been making supplementary recordings about some of these deals, and I'm trying to do the sidebars as well. It's just a lot. It's a lot of content. But again, I try to keep these up unless there's a number that we have to redact, so that if you want to, You can pause it. You can read for yourself. We're not trying to hide anything from anybody who's watching.
There's nothing to hide here.
Yeah, literally, there's nothing to hide. Okay, so I think we're ready. Thank you. You may be seated back on the record. Jury's present. So line 13, if you want to, I'll pretend I'll be the judge right here, or you can be the judge, but I'll just put the judge up.
All right. Thank you. You may be seated back on the record. Jury is present, and we'll pick up where we left off with the cross-examination of Mr. Harrison, who is still under oath. Go ahead, Mr. Gaylord.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Harrison, before you return to Exhibit 1164, let me ask you a few preliminary questions. In April of 2008, there was a pre-launch date. I think you testified in April 25th of 2008.
Correct.
However, by early April, the enrollments were coming in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did there come a time where there was the decision made by the executive team and distributors as to where people would ultimately fit in terms of downline and the master distributor, the front line, etc.?
There did.
And were you involved in that?
Heavily.
And explain to the jury what your involvement was in establishing the initial structure of doTERRA's downline.
So we had gathered applications from those who had submitted them over the time period up to, I would say, mid-April. And somewhere in mid-April, it was time to structure the team, structure the organization. Maybe think of it as choosing your baseball players, right? Or choosing your fantasy football league. So we literally spread out all of the forms on the conference room table and began the discussions of trying to identify who would go where, who would work best with who, that sort of thing.
So, just if I can put a visual to it, I'm sitting in a big conference room with a big table, and you've got a bunch of enrollment forms sitting on the table, and you're deciding where they're going to fit within the structure?
Correct. Absolutely.
And do you recall whether or not, when you were undertaking that task, whether you received an enrollment form from Judy Jellings?
I do.
Okay, if you take a look at Exhibit 1164, do you have that in front of you?
I do.
And do you recognize that as an enrollment form of Judy Jellings?
I do. It's interesting that they were putting all of the teams together. And I think that says a lot about the success, in quotes, of people at the very top. They've gotten so much help, not just being there at the beginning, but also having that support of that team built.
Yep. I just watched, and this isn't associated with Young Living, but I just watched a Beachbody training about how they were talking about strategically placing and doing everything to make the most money and to double dip and all that other stuff. And I can imagine that if you had the opportunity to really strategically place strong builders, either from Young Living or from other multi-level marketing companies, you'd want to do that at the beginning. And it does matter. Whether you believe it or not, it does matter. And especially matters to the master distributor, which is Justin Harrison. Justin Harrison is the tippity top master distributor, or at least he was at this point in time in doTERRA. So,
and he doesn't have to do all of the going for no, essentially, that a lot of upline will encourage downline
he just
to
has
do.
to breathe and pay for his monthly fee for buying his products. That's all he has to do, and not get terminated. That's
right.
That's all he has to do. Gosh, man.
It's not an equal opportunity like they always like to say.
Yep.
Okay. So
I think line 17, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And was this one of the documents that you, as part of the team that was putting together the doTERRA downline, this is the form that you would have looked at?
Yes.
And there's a mark at the very top called, quote, ENT''D, end quote. It says April 18th, 2008. What was that?
Mr. Tot says object to form. Also, object to the hearsay. And the court says, I'll have you rephrase.
Sure. Let me ask you a different question. So this is the form, though, that you were looking at in terms of where to put her within the downline?
Correct.
Is there anything on this document that would indicate what downline she was put in?
Yes, where it says,
Before you do that, what would we look at on the form in order to tell us where they were put in the downline?
it's in the box, quote, under quote, sponsor information, end quote, where it says, quote, placement sponsor, end quote.
And do you recognize the handwriting contained on this document?
Yes.
What handwriting do you recognize?
The name, quote, Carmen Anderson, end quote, and, quote, placement sponsor, end quote. That's my handwriting.
How about the enrolling sponsor? Do you recognize that?
No.
Okay. Move for admission of 1164.
Mr. Toth says, objection, hearsay.
Mr. Gaylord says it was a business record prepared, and it was prepared at or near the time the report was prepared by a business, by a person with a business duty to make the report, and had first-hand knowledge of that fact. It was a business regularly conducted. Report was made in the regular course of the business. I think the elements of the rule have been applied under 803.
The court says, the concern I have is under 803.6d. That foundation has to be laid by the record custodian, one other qualified witness. I'm not satisfied Mr. Harrison is a record custodian or other qualified witness. The objection is sustained.
803.
The court says 803d6.
I think it says, quote, or other qualified witness, or by certification, end quote. He's a witness to, in fact, sign the very document we're seeking to admit. There can't be much better evidence that he's a person who had direct knowledge of the existence of this document.
The court says, I concur he has direct knowledge of it, but I'm not satisfied he's a qualified witness in the same category as a records custodian. So the objection is sustained.
Okay. Looking at Exhibit 1164, does that refresh your recollection as to the date that Miss Jelling submitted her enrollment form?
Mr. Toth says objection. He's now using the document for hearsay purpose. And the court says he's asked to refresh recollection. We'll see if it refreshes his recollection or not. Mr. Harrison says it does.
And what date do you recall this form being submitted?
Mr. Toth, again, I'm going to object again, Your Honor. That's improper refreshing of recollection. In order, can we approach? And the court says yes. A sidebar discussion was had, and the court says go ahead.
Let me ask you a few preliminary questions again, Mr. Harrison. Do you recall when doTERRA received this document?
April 1st. Mr. Toth says, Your Honor, move to strike, non-responsive. The court says stricken.
Mr. Gaylord says, I guess my question, first of all, do you recall independent of this document when Exhibit 1164 was received by doTERRA? Do you recall when doTERRA received this document independent of looking at the document?
It would have been faxed with my others.
You don't have any specific direct recollection or about the time it was received? Did you have specific recollection about the time that it was received?
Specific? No.
General area type of?
It would have to have been prior to the pre-launch event.
Okay, it would have been prior to the time that you and the rest of
Yes.
the doTERRA executives sat around and put people in the various downline organizations?
Prior to the middle of April.
So it would have been prior to April 15th?
Correct.
And so you have a specific recollection that this document came in, but you can't recall the specific day it was received.
Correct.
Okay, you have Exhibit 1164 in front of you. Would that refresh your recollection as to the date that it was received by doTERRA.
Mr. Toth says, same objection, Your Honor. Same objection that I articulated in front of the bench earlier. The court says overruled. Mr. Harrison says it would.
And what was that date?
April 1st of 08.
Let me have you look at Plaintiff's Exhibit 61. Let me take these away for a minute, if I may, Your Honor.
The court says yes.
Does it have 61 there? No, Plaintiff's Exhibit 61. I'm informed that we've stipulated to the admissibility of 61, so we can put that up on the board.
The court says there's a stipulation as to 61. Is that right? Mr. Toth says yes, Your Honor. The court says, all right, I'll receive it.
So really quickly, if you're newly joining us for this transcript, I covered what a stipulation is in the Spark Notes for. Oh, I'm lagging again. Great. Sorry about that, everybody.
Fine?
Okay, it must be my computer then.
Oh no, there you go. Yeah, I see it.
Yep. Let me. I don't know. I'm scared. So I'm gonna not move around as much. Am I still lagging?
Okay. You seem good.
Okay. A stipulation is information that both sides agree are fact, and the jury is supposed to accept that as fact for the sake of the trial. So when they said Exhibit 61 has already been stipulated to, that means both sides agree that it can come in, and that's about all you need to know. But that's what a stipulation means, and that's why Mr. Toth is not throwing a fit as to letting that come in. So, yep. All right.
Perfect.
Do you recognize this document?
I do.
And this is another doTERRA enrollment form. It shows, let's go to the top part so I can talk about this a little bit. If you would, blow up the first half of the document. In the upper left-hand corner, there's a number, 1006. Do you know what that number represents?
I do.
What does that represent?
That would be his doTERRA membership number.
If I'm not mistaken, your number 1001.
Correct.
So this is the sixth person in the line of the downline.
Yes. So he would have been the sixth person to be entered into the system.
Is Mr. Herbert frontline to you?
He's not.
He's not. He's frontline. Do you know by this form who he's frontline to?
Yes, his placement sponsor says Lil Shepherd.
Let's go down to the lower half and see how you describe for me how you determined that. Blow up the bottom half from Gordon Herbert down. Okay, do you have Mr. Herbert's signature right?
Yes.
You then have the line, quote, Silver Sage, end quote. What is Silver Sage?
That was his business name at the time.
Yeah, okay, and then Gorbert Herbert, that's handwritten in, is that right?
That's correct.
Do you recognize the handwriting?
I do.
Whose handwriting is that?
That's mine.
Why were you writing his name into this form?
Probably just to clarify that was him.
Okay, is it your understanding that this form came in without his name there, just Silver Sage typed in?
Yes.
And do you recognize the handwriting in the lower part under, quote, enroller sponsor, end quote?
Yes.
Whose handwriting is that?
That's mine.
How about under, quote, placement sponsor, end quote?
That's mine.
Tell me what the enrolling sponsor is.
So the enrolling sponsor is typically the person that introduced them to doTERRA. Typically, it's a person that is paid some bonuses.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, and what's the placement sponsor?
Sounds pyramid schemey, but pyramid sponsor. Placement sponsor is where the organization that they are actually being physically located.
Okay, and so that's why he's not frontline to you, because he's frontline to Lil Shepherd.
Correct.
Okay, and is it your understanding that this form was entered into before you had conversation? Strike that. Let's talk about, if we can, Susie Bagwell for just one moment. If I recall your testimony correctly, she enrolled before you ever had a conversation with her?
I believe so.
And if I recall, you also testified about a telephone call in which she called doTERRA's offices. Is that right?
Correct.
She didn't call you?
No.
And do you recall who answered? Were you present when that call came in?
I believe so, yes.
And recount for me, do you recall when that call came in?
A specific date? I don't.
Okay.
No.
And do you recall the nature of that conversation? Do you recall what was said? I think you testified it was a call that you remember because of what Miss Bagwell had said.
She had said that to check the fax machines that Peter, her husband, his enrollment form would be there.
And who did she say that to?
I think it was myself and Emily were present.
Emily, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There could have been others, I don't recall.
So when she called doTERRA's offices, she told you that she had already sent in a form?
Yes. Mr. Todd says, Your Honor, I'm going to object to that as hearsay and ask that to be stricken. The court says, response?
Mr. Gaylord said, I think the answer is already in.
Court says, I'll sustain the objection and strike to the testimony.
Just because you introduced someone to doTERRA doesn't mean they were solicited to join, correct?
Correct.
I asked you questions about Tamalu Watkins. You had never met her before she joined doTERRA, correct?
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think you testified your first conversation with her was at the pre-launch on April 25th, 2008, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall that she enrolled in doTERRA on April 18th, 2008?
Not specifically.
Not specifically?
Right.
Do you recall receiving an enrollment form demonstrating that she enrolled on April 1st, 2008?
If she enrolled on that date, she would have been on my desk, so yes.
She would have been on the desk that you put in the downline?
Yes.
Show you exhibit, if you would, take a look at exhibit 1166. This is one of the enrollment forms that you would have reviewed as part of...
Mr. Todd says, Mr. Gaylord, this is another one. Can we approach very quickly? And the court says yes, and a sidebar discussion was had. Back to Mr. Gaylord.
Do you have 1165 in front of... Yeah, I actually want you to look at 1165, not 1164, I think.
Mr. Todd says 1166.
Actually, I want him to look at 1165. Do you have 1165 in front of you?
I do. There's the little attitude.
Yes, I think he just needs to wake up a little bit.
Right.
This is another doTERRA enrollment form?
Correct.
Does this refresh your recollection? Take a moment and look at it, and I'm asking you if this refreshes your recollection as to when Tamalu Watkins submitted her enrollment form for doTERRA.
Mid-April, yes.
And what date specifically?
April 15th.
And
Exactly mid-April.
And that was before you had any conversations with Miss Watkins?
Correct.
Do you know Sherry Ross?
I do.
Who is Sherry Ross?
She's one of the larger Young Living leaders.
Did you work with Sherry Ross while you were associated with Young Living?
Occasionally.
And were you aware that Miss Ross had distributed to Young Living distributors a copy criticizing the actions and activities taken by the executives at doTERRA?
Yes. I want to see a copy of the actions and activities criticizing them.
Yeah, me too.
Oh,
I wonder if we could find that.
Right.
I bet it's in. I wonder if it's in evidence. I wonder. I'll have to ask Wendy how to get it, if it's even possible to get it. So I'll ask someone. Yeah.
I took a little screenshot. Okay. Even though I highlighted, I wasn't reading everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes. And Mr. Toth says, Your Honor, I'm going to object to, we've had discussions about other Young Living distributors, other distributors' activities and actions. I think we're kind of in that again, this is not someone who's at issue in this case. The court says the objection is relevance. Mr. Toth says, yes, Your Honor. And the court says, what's the response?
Your Honor, it goes to the reasons distributors may have left and gone to Young Living because they were distributors within Young Living who were disseminating information and informing their distributor base about doTERRA.
The court says you're arguing relevance as to the damage issue?
Yes, as to the reasons and the cause for distributors such as the 13 to leave and join doTERRA.
Mr. Toth says, under 403, Your Honor, that is minimally prohibitive and it has significant prejudicial value. I don't think it's possible, and the court says, I'll allow some limited latitude because there is, as to the damages issue, but there is significant probative value is there. So I will allow little latitude. Go ahead.
Mr. Gaylord says, do you recall receiving an email in which you were provided a copy of Miss Ross's email or letter that was disseminated to her distributors?
I do.
And do you recall whether or not that letter made any reference to doTERRA?
It did.
Do you recall whether the letter was critical of what doTERRA was doing?
Mr. Toth says, Your Honor, again, I'm going to object. This is sort of hearsay. We're pulling in the substance of a document or a letter that hasn't, it's a hearsay document. And the court says, I'll sustain that.
Mr. Harrison, you resigned on February 11th, 2008, correct?
Yes.
And you were shown the letter you sent to Mr. Young and Mrs. Young. Do you remember that testimony?
I do.
And it was Exhibit 17, right?
Yes.
Do you recall that? Sorry.
Yes.
Do you have a recollection of having who's Richard Dastrup?
Richard Dastrup was one of the Utah YL leaders that I worked with often.
Was he one of the leaders you worked with?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, if you would, take a look at Exhibit 120. You can put that one away, my apologies. You testified that you do not recall signing a non-solicitation employment agreement that you were shown by Mr. Toth, right?
Correct.
Do you recall ever making a commitment to anyone that you would not use your relationship at Young Living to recruit?
I do.
Hello, everyone who's coming in. We're manning the chat and reading at the same time. So I also cannot walk and talk at the same time. So apologies. Okay. Okay.
Oh,
Mr. Toth?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Toth says, object. I'll object to this line of questioning, Your Honor. 2 reasons. 1, it's going to implicate testimony. It's going to implicate conversations with other Young Living distributors. And 2, he's now making a legal conclusion. He's now talking about a legal conclusion. The court says, the way the question was phrased was about his understanding, not a legal conclusion. So the objection's overruled in that respect. What was the first part? And Mr. Toth said, oh, wrong highlight. Mr. Toth says, can we approach again, Your Honor? I just loathe to have this discussion. And the court says, sure. And a sidebar discussion was had.
Mr. Harrison, you work, strike that. Who paid your salary?
Mr. Toth says, object as to time.
Who paid your salary in 2001?
A company called A Plus Benefits.
Not Young Living?
No.
Who paid your salary in 2002?
A company called Teamworks.
Not Young Living?
No.
Who paid your salary in 2003?
Mr. Toss says, Your Honor, I'm going to object. We're heading right back in an area. The court says, what's the relevance?
Mr. Gaylord says, goes to the lack of consideration, failure of consideration.
The court says, sustained.
Mr. Gaylord said, let me take a few minutes and bring you back to 1996. At that time, tell the jury, were you involved in multi-level marketing?
I was.
How old were you? Testing your memory.
That's right. I would have been 23 years old.
So you've been in the multi-level marketing business for over 20 years?
Yes.
And you started out as a distributor, right?
Yes.
For what company?
A company called Equinox.
How long were you working for Equinox?
5 years approximately.
And during that time, you became acquainted with the Herberts, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, they were actually members of my team.
And did they have any conversations with you about joining Young Living?
They did.
And in fact, they persuaded you to join Young Living as a distributor.
They did.
So you were a distributor at Young Living before you became an employee?
I was.
And you became familiar during your time as a distributor with Young Living, as well as after Strike That. You became acquainted as a distributor at Young Living with its policies and procedures?
Very much so. And I also want to say, so even the company that I was part of before, which was Juice Plus, there are people at corporate who were distributors prior. And I think it's funny that they moved that switch because I think it's just like more stability as far as income goes. They're actually having a corporate job. And it's funny that, you hear so many, the reasons that distributors want to grow their team and stuff is like giving them that dream that they don't have to work a 9 to 5. They don't have to work in corporate land. And we have people just moving in and going the opposite direction in that way.
Yeah. Yep. Very good point. Very good point.
I don't
And
know.
leaving their
Sorry, go ahead.
Where were we?
I don't know. I'm awful at this. Okay, and maybe number 4?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, number 8. So you were a distributor at Young Living before you became an employee.
I was.
And you became familiar during your time as a distributor with Young Living, as well as after Strike That, you became acquainted as a distributor at Young Living with its policies and procedures.
Very much so.
And you, in fact, became acquainted with the policies and procedures afterwards, right?
Yes, sir.
In part because one of the subject areas that you taught on was the compensation plan.
Correct.
Compensation plan is not necessarily contained within the policies and procedures, but is something that is part of the relationship between the independent distributors and Young Living.
Yes.
Let me have you look at Exhibit 1136, please. My apologies. May I approach again, Your Honor?
The court says yes, of course. And Mr. Harrison says, okay, we're there.
Okay, so you're familiar with this document?
I am.
Okay, did you have any involvement in the preparation of Exhibit 1136?
I did. Very much so. Very much.
You're good. What was your involvement?
I helped write this document.
Okay, and part of your involvement was because of your prior relationship as a distributor of Young Living, right?
Correct.
So you had an understanding of the terms and conditions that were contained in this?
Yes.
Because they governed your responsibilities as a distributor before?
Right.
And if you look at the first page, let's blow up 1.1 if you wouldn't mind, Lori. The third paragraph says, quote, you must take responsibility for your own business by considering yourself to be the CEO of your company, end quote. Did I read that right?
Correct.
And you understand that. You understand when you joined Young Living as an employee that the distributors are responsible for their own business.
Definitely.
And when you joined, you understood that the independent distributors would look to their upline support team to help provide support.
Absolutely.
In fact, that's what it says just down here, that quote, seek the needed support from your upline sponsor, end quote, right?
Correct.
So just from an example standpoint, you may be a distributor, but you always have your upline, your front line to somebody.
Correct.
And if you have an upline, that's the person you should look to?
Yes.
Let's look at section 2.1. Let's go to 2.2. My apologies. 2.2 says, quote, no person is required to purchase Young Living products to become a distributor. That was true. You didn't have to purchase a Young Living product to become a distributor, did you?
Correct.
Let's turn to 3.1. 3.1 defines what the independent contractor status says. Quote, as a Young Living distributor, you are an independent sales contractor and are not a purchaser of a franchise or business opportunity. The agreement between you and Young Living does not create an employer-employee relationship, agency partnership, or joint venture, end quote. Do you see that?
I do.
Do you understand that under section 3.1, the distributors were independent of Young Living?
Correct.
Did you have an understanding as well that a distributor was free to participate in other multi-level marketing or network marketing business ventures?
Yes.
That was true when you signed up or became an employee.
Yes.
And that was true when you resigned?
Yes.
And that was contained. If we could quickly go to section 3.10.1, pull that up just quickly so we can see it. 3.10.1 in the lower left-hand corner.
Mr. Smith says wrong color. I don't think that's right.
Mr. Gaylord says, yeah, quote, if you participate in other network marketing ventures, end quote. Do you see that language in the first sentence?
I do.
Now, do you have an understanding as to what happens to a distributorship when a distributor elects to cease operating its distributorship?
I do.
Tell me what your understanding is as you understand the policies and procedures at the time that you became employed.
So if a distributor terminates their position either from inactivity, meaning they haven't placed an order or purchased a product in a year's time, 12 months' time, or if they voluntarily terminate, meaning they've submitted an EML or written saying, I'm out for whatever reason, or if they're terminated for cause, meaning Young Living chose to terminate them for whatever reason. In all of those instances, there's a feature built into the commission structure called roll up, which means that the people that are directly underneath the person that terminated, then literally you can visualize roll up to the next person, to the immediate upline sponsor, whoever that is, and become part of their front line.
Okay, let me give a little. I did this when I ended my distributorship in April. We manually had someone take my spot, so it wasn't a true roll up. But the reason I did that was because back when the first year that I signed up in 2019, one of the legs on the girl that I signed up with ghosted her. She stopped responding to comments. She stopped placing her order, so that leg became inactive for her rank. So she was silver at the time. She was making good money, and when that leg disappeared, even though she had the volume, she needed that leg to be able to say she was silver and to get more money from being a silver. And so all the people got sucked up into, they rolled up into the other person that was on her team. However, it took a while to make that leg the way it was supposed to be and to have the right volume. So it's kind of complicated. And so you can manually, if you say, not that I would recommend this. I did this because I didn't want to screw over my upline, and that was just my personal choice. I signed over my line to someone else. So pretend this is me holding my spot. Sign over a line. Someone took my spot, just like in Indiana Jones. And I know I'm lagging again, where they flop someone, they kind of push something out at the same weight. So that's what it maintains all the structure. And I know I'm lagging. I'm sorry. It maintains the structure below. So all of the little levels, they just move up one position. They don't all like lose their structure when that person disappears or gets terminated or whatever.
My downline just went directly to my direct upline. And I
Okay.
told them before that I was leaving and why I was leaving. And if they chose, then they were just directly under my direct upline.
Okay. Cool.
And when I was technically in Young Living, I didn't have anybody. I didn't even know that I was a distributor until the year's time came up.
Yep.
Okay.
I think that I'm on line 17. Oh no, I'm on line 14, right? Because you said, yep. Okay.
All right, we're back. Have you ever heard of the ability to Oh, we just went over this. Have you ever heard of the ability to transfer one's distributorship?
Absolutely.
Let's turn to section 3.5 if you would please. Let's blow up the bottom part of 3.5 on the lower left-hand corner, please. So 3.5 provides that, quote, you may not sell, transfer, assign your distributorship rights to any person or entity without Young Living's written approval. To obtain that approval, the following criteria must be met, end quote. Let's go to the top, blow up that top section before 5.1, just the top right-hand corner. And these are the conditions that had to be met, right?
Correct.
So if I understand your testimony, a distributor could make application, submit it to Young Living, and Young Living would decide whether they would allow the transfer of the distributorship from that distributor to a third party.
Correct.
For example, if a mother was a distributor and wanted to transfer to her daughter, they would have to follow these procedures.
Correct.
And assuming that, Young Living would make the decision whether to allow that transfer.
Yes.
Do you have an understanding as to what occurs when... Did you have an understanding when you were employed as to what occurs when a distributor's distributorship is suspended?
I do.
What happens?
Their position is maintained, but their commissions are frozen.
So the distributor no longer receives a commission check.
Correct. They can't. They're not paid. They're not able to access their online virtual office to see if their sales or their team.
Okay.
But the position is held.
It's held until the company makes a decision as to whether the suspension would be permanent or whether it would be removed.
Well, generally, whether or not they're going to be terminated or not.
And could a distributor voluntarily cancel their distributorship at any time?
Anytime.
Hold on. I know I'm gonna lag, so just bear with me. If you can hear me, great. Young Living would never, in my opinion, if someone decided to ghost, they could manually hold that position to not screw over their Royal Crown Diamonds or their Crown Diamonds or their diamonds. So they can like essentially what they did in well, I'm not going to talk about that, but they would not, even if they would freeze that to maintain the structure, and then they would put someone in there. I mean, they can do whatever they want at Young Living. So when they're talking about, oh, yes, you can cancel, it would be canceled and frozen, and then they would put someone in there that would still like maintain and keep their top pyramid performers happy. That's my perspective, but I've also seen it happen with people losing their rank and then someone else gets that spot, so the leg doesn't get destroyed. Because a leg would get destroyed, like in a Royal Crown Diamond situation, that leg, that person at the very top, they need 6 legs, I think, at 1.5 million PV or GV for each one. So if that person stops ordering, that leg disappears. You lose your Royal Crown Diamond status until you can build that leg up again. So that's That's the weird part about it. I don't know.
You know, I just kind of got a flashback of one of the conferences that I went to. So with Juice Plus, you would always be whatever, like if you would hit a rank, even if you lost your entire team, you would still be that rank, like that you wouldn't get demoted based on your team or sales or anything. But I remember seeing somebody at, because every time they would bring the people who reached like the top rank on stage, and they would tell their story in like 5 minutes or something, and like try to be inspirational and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There was a lady who said that she had like had reached like barely to make it, like everything, and then the person who she was really like downline, who was really carrying like the entire team, she ended up quitting, and her whole team like just fell through. And so this lady was about to make it to the top, and she had to like restart everything, and she used that as this kind of inspirational speech that she didn't quit, and that she was just like focused, and she worked even harder, and she finally made it. But that's not inspirational, because you're literally relying on so many other people.
Yeah. So many other people's purchases, not necessarily customer orders. So that's
no
the
control.
biggest. And that's one of the biggest things I have an issue with multi-level marketing, is that you can buy your volume instead of having to submit your sales every month to what you sold to actual customers, and then your upline getting paid on the commission for those sales, not from the volume purchased. So,
but them saying like you're in charge, or like it's your thing, and you're relying on so many other people to
it's and that's right, because they even said it in this document. You're the CEO, or act like the CEO of your own business, when you can be yeeted at any point from Young Living for any reason. At least in Texas, you can. It's an at-will thing, so they can. I don't know. It's just, it's awful. Further proof, in my opinion, that this is such a bad business model. That's a great summation of what Kat and what I was saying. Yeah, it sucks that your upline has control over your business to be vindictive. Yeah, not mostly
and downline too.
Yeah, mostly downline. So if you really want to take this for a hypothetical, do not take this for my recommendation to do this. Can you imagine if a downline stopped ordering? Someone would immediately lose their rank. In a crown diamond situation, if they cannot purchase their volume to be a crown diamond. They can only add 1,000 PV to that themselves a month. So it's a little over $1,000. They need $1.5 million in volume per month per leg. From what I understand.
They lose their status once you're there. You don't keep it.
Nope, you do not keep it.
Wow.
So you can keep it like for show, so that Young Living doesn't lose face, but you don't get paid on it. So and it's, I don't know, the downline really does have the control, but
your business, yeah.
They use information control and behavior control and emotional control to keep the downlines in check, and then the downlines forget that they're the reason that these uplines have all the money that they do. Okay. Am I on line 18? I think I am. I thought I was gonna. Well, generally when they're going to be terminated. Oh yeah, just cancel distributorship. Okay, I'm on line 18.
Okay.
Let's look at section 14.4. It's at page 136, 008, 14.4. Down there at the bottom. That reflects the distributor's right to cancel at any time for any reason, right?
Yes.
Let's look at 14.5, next section. And the effect of that cancellation is that, quote, upon cancellation or termination, the distributor, end quote, quote, releases all rights to their distributorship benefits, including the downline organization, and all future commissions and bonuses resulting from the downline sales production, end quote, right?
Right.
So that means if you cancel, your downline business remains with Young Living?
Correct.
I'd like to ask you strike that, just like to ask a few questions. While you were at Young Living, while you were associated with Young Living in its employ, did the company go through a number of managerial, executive management position changes?
Yes, several.
And how many occasions did you see changes in the executive management while you were there for these 7 years?
In the 7 years I was there, I saw at least 3, possibly 4 times where Gary would come in and flush the entire executive team.
So, what happened on several occasions? Oh, so that happened on several occasions.
Several occasions, yes.
Let's pull up Exhibit 27. Let's blow up paragraph 3 right there in the middle. Can you bring that down? Let's go up a little bit further on this agreement. Let's go up here to what's this? This first line just below the first paragraph saying quote based end quote. Blow that up for a moment. So, according to this agreement has 3 purposes, right? According to what this document says.
Okay.
And one of those 3 purposes, if you then blow up that 1, 2, and 3, please. The first one is to memorialize a position of trust and confidence. Second one was to memorialize the employee's obligation. The third one is the one Mr. Toth focused on. And that was that you were going to memorialize the employment agreement not to solicit, etc., for a period of 1 year. Do you see that?
I do.
And that's from the date of termination, right?
Right.
Of employment with Young Living?
Correct.
Now, in terms of the policies and procedures, did you have any expectation that the distributors would follow the policies and procedures?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of the agreement, Exhibit 27, did you ever have an expectation that if you were to solicit distributors beyond the 1 year period, you would be liable
No,
for those?
I did not.
I have no more questions.
Mr. Smith says, Your Honor, this is a good place to break for the week. I could go on, but I think I have maybe an hour still. I'm afraid I'm already tired. You tell me, Your Honor. And the court says, you won't hear me say no to that. It's Friday afternoon at 5:30. Memorial Day weekend. We'll break for the weekend then. And of course, you get Monday off, so don't come in Monday. The building will be closed. Try not to be too disappointed. We'll see you Tuesday morning. Coordinate with Cassie so you can find out the right place to meet up with her at 8:30. Don't discuss the case over with the weekend with one another and with anyone else. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone back here Tuesday after a nice long weekend. All right, we'll be in recess. And the jury left the courtroom. And the court says, thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Harrison, you can step down. I just wanted to see if there was anything we needed, any housekeeping matters to discuss while the jury is out before we leave with respect to time. I've got plaintiffs I almost forgot. Our first morning, I didn't have my little clock running, so I took some notes. I need to add this in. Plaintiffs had, let me see, this was to defense. So plaintiffs have 7.5 hours, and I've got 9 hours to defendant so far. So that's where we are at on time. Mr. Smith said, thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Gaylord.
Oh, wait. Mr. Gaylord says, thank you, Your Honor.
Court says, anything else? Mr. Toth says, no, Your Honor.
Mr. Gaylord says, thank you, Your Honor.
And the court says, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you all for all of your hard work. We'll see you back on Tuesday.
Holy crap.
Did we get through another transcript?
Yeah.
So these are all the sidebar discussions. Let's see how many. I don't even know what I'm in the but we'll have to make another video for the sidebars because holy crap, there's a lot of pages. Oh wait, so 250. There's 30 pages of sidebar discussions. That's good. That's good. So what do we live chat? What do we think so far? Holy
it's
crap.
funny as we were talking about that and like downline and upline. I know they'd always say like complain up and like inspire down. So even if you were frustrated about anything with the company, you would not tell your downline.
Yep. Positive goes out and down and negative goes up. And I was told that so many times. So many times.
And you know what was so annoying is like just I can pick up on, especially, if with my upline, I spent a lot of time with her, talking over Voxer and Messenger and everything. So I knew, and I knew her from school too, in person. So when things would be a little bit negative and she wouldn't tell me, that would really frustrate me, because I'm like, I need to know.
Right.
Don't always be, like toxic positivity. And I know that wasn't necessarily her fault, because she was being told, to stay positive to me. But as what I saw as like a colleague and as a friend, and just in general, just respect, I did not like that, because I knew when something was wrong.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I know that. Let me stop sharing. Maybe this is what's causing my lag. Maybe not. With the whole positivity thing, I understand giving someone a chance if you've had a negative interaction with them, to let them know, like, hey, you hurt my feelings first, instead of a million people finding out before the person who actually hurt your feelings finds out about that. I get that in a limited sense, where you give someone the respect to say, but again, there's exceptions to that, because if you're like, "Hey, so and so hurt my feelings. Is this reasonable that I got my feelings hurt? Can you help me work through this?" Finding a trusted friend or someone who's not gonna spread stuff around, but say, "Okay, yeah, I think you're DC.
Yeah.
I think you're a little in your feels. That might not be what they meant, but why don't you ask these kind of questions and follow up with it?" Because then you can say, okay, let's have a healthy, productive conversation and resolve things. I get that, but not I don't know. I know I'm like lagging. Oh God. It's
Good.
like so
Not the audio, which I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, the audio is the most important part. So and again, so now I'm gonna make a Snark. I did Spark Notes, but I adulterated the logo for Spark Notes, and we're calling it Snark Notes. So we did that for Transcript 1. It's 7 minutes, so you can catch up. I'm gonna do it for Transcript 2, 3, and 4. I don't know how I'm gonna do 4 in 7 minutes, because there's 250 pages. So we'll see how that goes. Question for you, Kat.
I need to do one. Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's on my list.
Kat is like running a full-time business and being an activist and keeping everything running in her house and like streaming with me. So
just don't do it. Don't do it. It's so low in calories.
What's the most problematic thing you've seen about Optavia? Like, if you could just
low calories, and
okay.
I'm in a new mom's I forgot what it's called, but it's for Optavia, and for new moms who are breastfeeding, chest feeding their kiddos or their babies, and I think just so predatory that they are going after these new moms, and just supporting that idea that they need to kind of like bounce back, or change their body in that way, be on this calorie deficit that's going to impact their ability to have milk production overall. No, that's not something that new moms or anybody needs to think about or focus on.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you should be able to have a varied way of eating, intake, nutrient-dense foods from local grocery stores. This is not talking about food deserts or anything. That's a whole nother topic. But the fact that they have their own kind of foods is not promoting the teaching of skill building around sustainable health promoting actions. If you're always going to be relying on someone else, then I think it's a scam.
Yeah. That's a good point. Well, I can't.
My goal is to like help people build skills and then let them fly away. Like, if I am working with someone for longer than the time that we've discussed and what their skill needs to kind of be, then that's failure, I think, on my part, because I shouldn't want to work with people forever. That's an issue.
That's such a good perspective. You don't really, you hear it from really good ethical business owners and registered like people in the health field like you. I think you kind of get stuck that, oh, I'm going to need this person forever. And it's like, well, if you're fully equipped and able to make the healthy decisions, then you shouldn't have to work with
build the
someone.
skills and everything.
Yeah. Well, that's a video that we are excited to watch on your end. Kat has a ton of videos on her account. I did like a screen record on the first video where we highlighted Kira's website and your YouTube to show people like where you're at. But Kat has a ton of great content, and
I think I'm going live tomorrow.
Yes. Okay. What time? Do you know what time yet? Or are you going to put it in your community? Are you going to put it in your community tab so we can?
Yeah, I'll probably put it in my
notification.
It'll be a reaction. Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Well, hopefully, I'll make sure that I'm available to hear you on in the comments. So thank you, live chat. You've been incredible. I have another streaming platform in mind I'm going to try out so that we can have the live comments come up here, but still be able to have other people access, like have guests like Kat on. So StreamYard doesn't allow for that. So I'm looking into some other things so that other people can enjoy the live chat too. Again, I'm late, so 1.5 speed. Eloise, good luck. I polite demon lawyer on 1.5 speeds, a little bit of a trip. So best wishes to you. I don't know. Replay crew, you've been incredible. Thanks so much for the support, and we will catch you for transcript number 5 next time. So, yep, it's gonna be good. I'm gonna roll the outro, and we'll see you next time. Okay.
Bye.